Cincinnati Zoo Tales. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. We really appreciate everyone tuning in for another episode. I'm really excited today, Jenna. We're here to talk about invertebrates, about insects. We're being joined by Michelle Griesinger, who's one of our senior keepers on the World of Insect team. So these are some of the episodes that I enjoy the most because it's something that I know almost nothing about. So I love learning. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
You're welcome. Hi, everyone.
Yes, thanks for joining us. We want to hear all about insects and a specific project that you're working on. But your job is even more unique, I feel like, than just becoming a zookeeper. And we always start the episodes off kind of hearing how people got to where they are. And working with insects, I feel like, is a little more rare than just the average zookeeper. Mm-hmm. So just tell us how you got interested in this or how you got into the field, your journey, I guess.
Yeah, so I grew up on a small farm and always was catching grasshoppers and things like that. I did feed them to my cats on occasion, but we won't talk about that too much. But
the things we learn as we age.
Yes, exactly. Like, oh, that poor grasshopper. But no, when I went to college, I am a biology major and took an entomology class and fell in love with it. And we actually did a behind-the-scenes tour with World of the Insect. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to leave. Like, that's amazing. And at the time, there was a different curator, and I had, talked to him. I was like, can I intern, volunteer, whatever? And he's like, I'm actually retiring. I'm really sorry. And I was like, oh, no. But turns out I started as a volunteer educator, actually, and did that for a little bit, and then got accepted into the internship program at World of the Insect for a full day. So it was a little bit different back then. And then vowed I'd never leave after that, so I hung around, volunteered in a few different departments as well, and then got a full-time job at World of the Insect.
That's
so
awesome.
I've been there for about 9 years.
What were you thinking of doing just originally getting your biology degree?
I had no idea.
No idea? Okay.
I had no idea. I loved science and the animal aspect, and I definitely wanted to go in the direction of animals. I just didn't know which facet.
Okay.
So there's a lot to do, and I was like, I didn't know, do I want to go the research route or the animal care route?
So one class and one field trip, basically.
Did it.
Yes. Okay.
Solidified it.
Yep.
Well, you said you went on a behind-the-scenes tour while you were in college. Mm-hmm. So did you go to UC in the area, or?
I went to NKU.
NKU, okay,
Yep.
Gotcha. Not too far away then.
No.
That's funny that was
awesome.
your experience with entomology in college, because my experience was like, wow, that was such a hard course. I need to get away from invertebrates. I was like...
See, there's just more you can learn.
There's a lot more to learn.
That's honestly what did it for me, is you have so many species that there is never a cap to what you learn. The diversity is just immense.
My gosh. Yeah. I feel like that in just the world of antelope, So insects is times a million.
It's there are things that I do not know, and I feel totally fine saying, I am not sure on that, but I'll try to find out that answer for you.
Exactly, yes. So did you have a very specific area that you were working with to begin with? I know you guys kind of break up your department into different, I don't know what you call them,
sections.
Okay.
Specialties, right?
Specialties,
Okay.
yeah. So I am the primary keeper of all of our flower beetle species, cockroach species, and millipede species. So I think right now we have 8 flower beetle species, 8 cockroach species, and then 2 millipede species.
Huh. What makes a flower beetle species? Or what makes them belong in that category? Or can you give us an example of a flower beetle?
So a flower beetle, one that is common around here is a June beetle.
Okay.
And they're the Catinus is the genus. They're not. They are green, and they have a yellow stripe. You'll often see them around compost, sometimes flowering plants.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking
about. Buzzing around, probably around this time of year. Maybe give it another month, and you'll see them like crazy.
Okay, September-ish in Cincinnati.
Yep.
Okay.
And you'll see, if you dig in your backyard, you'll see the grubs and stuff.
Okay.
No promise that it's that species. It could be a stag beetle species. It's very hard to tell, but...
Very cool.
One thing I definitely want to ask you about, to clear up for not only our listeners, but to clear up for myself as well. Obviously, you guys are called World of the Insect, and I think that's a little bit of a misnomer because you take care of a lot more than just insects.
Yes.
But what exactly makes an insect an insect? And I know you take care of millipedes. Millipedes are not insects, correct?
Scientifically, Yes, you are correct. They are so all insects and millipedes, even crustaceans, they're all under this umbrella of arthropods. And there's different classes under that. So like millipedes, for example, they're in the class Diplopoda. There's Insecta for insects. So they're different based on body structures mainly, anatomy and things like that.
Okay.
That's a tough question.
That is, I know, it's hard to just define one's like genus or like genera, but
so like for diplopods or like millipedes, they have 2 body segments. You have your head and your trunk, and that's it. Like it's funny and then of course you have your legs, but that doesn't define technically what it is.
Okay.
But then you have other like insects. You've got your 6 legs, your 2 antennae, your 3 body segments. So it's just, it's different.
it is hard because like colloquially, I'm struggling on words today.
Me too, it's okay.
I don't even want to try it. I know what you're trying to say.
You know what I'm trying to say. But you'll hear people refer to insects as like a catch-all term, essentially. Yes. And like they talk about spiders as insects and millipedes as insects, and they don't all technically fit under that umbrella.
Correct.
But, okay.
It's like the bug, like, ooh, gross bug, or, whatever. When you're referring to a small critter, often it's called a bug or an insect when it's not necessarily classified like that. Us insect people at World of the Insect, we do not care. As long as you're talking about bugs, that's all. That's okay.
I was about to say,
we're not going to get technical.
I wasn't trying to disrespect or anything.
Not at all. Do not take it as a disrespectful thing at all. Other people might disagree, but not us. We don't
That's
care.
awesome.
It's funny, I think a lot of people, you just said, like, ew, bug, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by insects or arthropods or all of the above,
okay.
But
invertebrates. How's that?
Yeah. It's interesting that I grew up with the same parents, and my sister has an intense fear of spiders, and doesn't necessarily like bugs.
Yeah.
But I don't know why that happened. It's not like my parents grew up telling me that they were bad and that, you know what I mean? So I wonder, I always question it. I think they're so fascinating, and I was trying to have this discussion with her, like, logically in my head, I can see a spider and know that it cannot harm me. Like, I know a few. Like, if I saw a brown recluse or a black widow, I would probably kill it. I won't lie. I wouldn't want myself or my family to get bit by one if it were in our house. If we're outside, I probably wouldn't do anything. I don't know. The odds of it hurting me are so small. So then if it's a spider that I know isn't venomous and isn't going to hurt me, like, there's nothing about it that scares me. It doesn't creep me out. I find them fascinating. But I wonder, like, I don't know if you talk to people about this often, like, again, we had the same parents, the same, like, upbringing. I wonder why she's afraid. But her brain is just like, no, they're just creepy. Like, look at them. They just look creepy. And I'm like, oh, I think they look cool.
I don't know what it is. I don't necessarily know. A part of me thinks it's just fear of the unknown. The more you know about an animal or an insect, you all probably know this from some of your animals too, but the more knowledge base you have around a certain species or animal, it doesn't necessarily make them more predictable, but you understand why they're behaving the way that they behave. So
or the odds that they'll behave in a dangerous way or something.
Yes, and it's funny that you say that with a spider. I actually have a funny story real quick. My cousin, I just went on a camping trip with her. Her name's Morgan. Hi, Morgan. But she is not fond of spiders. Like, they scare her. And so I told her, I was like, next time you see one, instead of killing it, think about that spider being in the only place that it knows, and you turn on the lights and all it sees is this huge thing coming at it.
Right.
And, like, when it runs, think of it being like, like running away from you with the big, like, jumping spider eyes and stuff. And it actually helped her. So
oh, good.
Like,
I hope it helps her listening.
I try to, like, say it like that. Like, these spiders are quick, and I think that's what gets a lot of people are like, I don't know where it went. It's like, they'll eat some of your other pests, you know. They take care of some of your other, like, small household pests and things like that. But yeah, I think if you, like, look into the eyes of the spider itself or the other, like, insect, think about them, like, screaming from you.
Right, I'm like they're you can easily squish them. There's nothing to be afraid of. Like,
exactly.
I don't want you to, but you easily could.
Right.
But I was wondering if you hear that a lot. Like, is it hard to be... Sometimes it's hard for us to hear just guess like giving misinformation, like calling painted dogs hyenas. We're like, no, we want you to like know the difference. And of course, if it's appropriate, we'll like try and correct them if it makes sense in the moment. But like, do you overhear people saying, "Oh, that's so gross," or "Oh, I'm so scared," like all the time? I would have a hard time. Like,
we get that constantly.
Yeah.
Do you say anything, or do you just kind of?
Depends on the situation, or if I'm like really like have an appointment or anything like
Sure.
that to get to. But generally, if it's fitting and the scenario's right, if it's a child, I'll generally swoop in and be like, "Actually, did you know?" And then say blah 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 fun fact about it. And they're usually like, "Wow," or like during keeper talks, be like, "Why are you afraid? Do you know? Like, what scares you about this animal?" And a lot of times they can't say.
Yes,
And
I was trying to figure that out with my
innate
sister.
Fear, and to me, it's just you don't have the knowledge base around it, and you can find beauty the more knowledge you have about anything.
Yeah.
I agree. Yes.
So I think that's part of it. But I don't know. Like, some of it, I'm sure, is just an innate fear. If something's running at you, then you freak out. I don't know.
I do think that fear of unknown is a huge aspect. I do think there's also like a little bit of like the kind of pop culture aspect of it. Like,
that's true.
growing up, there's just, you're told bugs are creepy and they're creepy crawly creatures, and in horror movies there's always a giant spider for whatever reason in horror movies.
There
it
is.
seems like
That's
Every
true. I guess you
movie.
can learn from so many things other than just your parents or your family.
Yeah.
But I do hear it a lot from parents or like guardians at the zoo. It's a lot of, "Oh, that's gross," but then the kid's super excited and like, "Look, Mom," or whatever. And
That's promising,
I
though.
love that. I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, like swoop in or like, "Did you know?"
Yes.
But
Yeah, I feel like you guys have a lot of, you probably have a lot of extra opportunities for those moments.
yes, yeah,
And I'm sure the reptile keepers do as well.
yeah, yep. But it's fun.
Yeah, so one thing we definitely wanted to get to talking to you about was your millipedes that you work with. Millipedes are very cool, very fascinating. We want to hear about some of the species that you work with, some of the work that you're doing with them, if you don't mind talking to us about it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So both species that I work with, one is the giant African millipede, which is from Africa, East Africa specifically. Those, I don't know, that's what comes to my brain when I think millipede, but they're anywhere from about, on average, 9 inches to 7 to 9 inches long. And they can live, I think they can live roughly about 10 years or so.
Wow.
But it's hard.
Wow.
If you keep them in a group or a culture, you'll hear me say that a lot. It's the same thing, group or culture. Together, it's hard to track one particular individual
Okay, yeah.
all the way through its life stage, especially if you don't even catch it from the time it hatches to the time, like, they're communal, so it's hard.
Yeah.
But the other species, we call them desert ringworms, and it's a millipede from Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, that kind of southwest U.S. And they're really cool. Both are kind of in the same grouping where they have like an oblong body. They're circular, and they've got a bunch of legs underneath. But I guess I should go over what a millipede is.
Yeah,
One of the biggest questions that we get is millipede or centipede. What's the difference? And there is a huge difference.
I feel like millipedes are cuter for some reason.
They are!
Which is not a scientific thing to say, but I feel like they are.
Totally are,
They're
I think. No, millipedes have two, for every body segment, so the whole trunk of their body is segmented. And centipedes are the same, but for every segment that they have, millipedes have 2 pairs of legs. Centipedes only have 1.
Okay.
So they have half as many legs, but not each species, even within millipedes, has the same number of segments. And same with centipedes. So, like, the leg count's totally different.
Okay.
Based on species and age and everything else. But oftentimes, millipedes are toxic. They can excrete, like, a toxin from their skin. The chemical makeup of that is a whole other thing. Like, some can secrete, like, a cyanide substance, like your giant African millipedes. Other, it's just a foul odor, smell kind of toxin.
Like a don't eat me kind of warning to
yes,
predators, essentially.
exactly.
Okay.
Where centipedes are venomous, so they prey on their food. Millipedes eat compost and broken down wood.
I
So,
definitely didn't know that.
yeah, your centipedes are going to be a little more aggressive. Millipedes, which is probably why you think they're cuter, they're not going to be as predatory or ambush style. So,
Is it true too? I guess what I've always thought in my mind, one of the differences between millipedes and centipedes is I always picture millipedes with like the legs underneath of their bodies, and then centipedes with their legs like off to the sides of their bodies.
True, but it can be tricky.
Okay, there's exceptions.
Yeah, so the 2 millipede species that we have here are very rounded and their legs are underneath. There are other species in other genuses that are flat millipedes. And their legs kind of branch outward slightly. It's hard to tell. You're like, I don't know if that's a millipede or a centipede, but they have the more flattened body.
See, and that's why I was thinking millipedes were more round, but that's not true.
Not
for
always,
all
yes.
Okay.
And the ones, there's a lot of species native to this area where they're the flattened species.
Okay.
So, I shouldn't say species, group of millipedes, but yeah.
It's so tricky. The group
It
of
is.
species okay, so
It is.
are either of them like endangered or having any issues with population numbers?
So, endangered, no, they're considered threatened. They have a lot of wild collecting done on them for the pet trade.
Which is so interesting because we were just talking about how a lot of people don't really like insects.
It's a whole new-ish kind of trendy kind of thing with invertebrates in general. So you see a lot of scorpions, mantises, as April talked about in the previous episode. Like, you just see a lot more illegal pet trade activity with invertebrates.
Oh, what a bummer.
Yeah. So both the desert ringworm and the giant African millipede are a part of a swarm program, and that is the safety web for arthropod reproduction management. And it's basically 5 institutions who successfully rear these animals have to have a certain amount of animals per group so that they can share with other zoos and have access for other zoos to take them so that we don't have to pull from the wild if ever we need.
So it's almost like the insect SSP that we talk about here on our podcast a lot. Like, you guys are making sure that there are genetically and literally enough numbers bred.
Mainly the numbers.
Zoos.
Yeah, just making sure that nobody is having to wild collect anything and bring it in. One, because we don't want to do that and deplete the wild population. But also, if we already have a system that's working here, we can share it with other institutions and get everybody on board and help.
Oh, that makes sense. Rather than somebody else collecting and them trying it their own way before figuring it out for years. Okay.
Correct. So we kind of share, we all collaborate and share what our numbers look like. And I think it's every six months or once a year. I cannot remember off the top of my head. But both species are. The desert ringworms just recently were added to that to the swarm program. So I don't even know how many people, honestly, if they have the 5 institutions yet. I'm not the swarm coordinator, but Cincinnati is.
That's interesting, though.
Is working with both of those.
What are the numbers of our animals that we have here? Like, I know we have obviously giant colonies, but how much are you able to keep track of that even?
So it's really tricky.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The only way I can really, so we have a 40-gallon tank with compost filled probably 9 to 10 inches and some broken down wood in there. The key for them to thrive, giant African millipedes, is to not disturb them.
Of course.
So to get a count is really tricky.
Yeah.
The last time I got a count, which has been a few months now, we had about 215, not including eggs or nymphs.
Wow. And
subadults.
They can all live together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, they actually do really well. Both species do really well together. They'd be fine on their own, but if we can manage them together, then that's preferable.
So I'm assuming if they don't like to be disturbed, these counts are pretty infrequent, I imagine.
Yes.
Yeah,
I try to, this will go into kind of my husbandry work with them, which I can talk about in a little bit, but I only really pull that substrate out once every 6 months or once every year because they need the space to molt, and if you disturb that substrate, you could squish or harm that animal, if not kill that animal. And if you disturb the molting process, which is basically just shedding that exoskeleton off, they're really vulnerable at that time. And they can be damaged. You can also squish eggs, hatchlings, anything like that. So we don't do it very often, and that's kind of been the key to success.
That makes sense.
Yes,
I mean, it's not
absolutely.
like there would be a lot of disturbances
Yes,
in their natural habitat if they were
correct.
not being bothered, like unless there was
Right.
construction and things going on.
It sounds goofy, but you know, I really struggled. One of my goals when I came on as a full-time keeper was to get the giant African millipedes to breed
Really?
successfully.
And you've
'Cause
done that?
Nobody here at the zoo had been able to do it, and I'm like, this species is so cool. They're like, in my eyes, they're the elephants of our department, this gentle giants, and they're so cool. And it was a pet project of mine. I was like, okay, I'm really going to focus on this, see what I can do. And I look back in Zims and the notes from other keepers, and really played around with a lot of stuff. And okay, well, this keeper tried different lighting, like this keeper isolated millipedes, like, or put a male and female together to try to encourage breeding behaviors and things like that. And what I noticed was about every 3 months that habitat was totally stripped out, cleaned, disturbed.
Okay.
And I was like, I am just going to let that go.
Yeah.
Because if that's not working, that's the simplest thing. Just let it go and see what happens. Obviously, if it became, you know, fungus city or overgrown or anything like that,
Sure.
you know, I can always clean it out and move from there. But I left it alone and I got eggs within like 6 months, 8 months. So
No
it's
way,
it's
that's
been a
awesome.
while, but yeah.
So since you didn't disturb them, how did you see the eggs? Or are they on
I
top?
saw the
Are they-
hatchlings. So
Oh.
how the habitat is kind of set up, like I said, it's a 40-gallon tank, and on the surface I have one piece of cork bark, so it's like a hide for them, and they love sitting under that, like it's their favorite. And they get romaine lettuce, they get cucumber, sweet potato, banana, and then they get a powdered shrimp chitin for calcium, and cat food, which is high in protein for them. And they love it. It's so cute. They hold it in their little
Oh my gosh.
their little
no
like
way.
front couple segments of
Oh my
legs and
gosh.
eat it. It's the cutest thing ever. But yeah, I happened to switch the romaine. I always put it under the cork bark because I'm like, if they're there, they're gonna eat it. And I lifted it up and there were hatchlings, and I was like, oh my god!
Okay.
And it's hard to determine because we also have native millipedes that
In the
come in with
soil.
the compost. So it's like, oh no! But it ended up being them. And
I can
ever
imagine that
since
was an
it's-
exciting moment.
How
Oh,
big
I'm
are they
so
when they're
happy.
hatchlings?
Oh boy, maybe. So when they hatch, they don't really have legs, and you don't see them until their first instar or first life stage.
Okay.
And that was at the point where I saw them, and they're about an inch, and they're white, and they have a little black stripe going down their
Okay.
back. But they
Interesting.
are maybe as thin as angel hair pasta.
Oh wow, so very
Like,
tiny.
yeah, really, really small, and like an inch. So it's
So
like
wait.
shake off the lettuce really gently if you're replacing it. But
So they hatch without legs, you said?
yes,
So
it's really weird.
legs come in after the first molt, I guess? Okay.
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's
So
incredible.
they hatch, and they're in this little like crescent-like shape. And well, okay, so the egg cracks, and they're kind of stuck in this like they can move their head, and that's about it. And this is all happening underground. And they'll like molt their first time through, and that's when they'll have about 6 legs. It's
Okay.
two pairs of leg per body segment at that point, which is not many segments at all. And they molt pretty quickly initially because they're growing faster. And it's weird because they grow like almost like an accordion. So it's not, they don't lengthen at the end or the head.
Oh, from the middle.
It's kind of in between those segments, they kind of
Huh.
expand. Almost like a telescope,
Okay.
kind of, is the only way that I can describe it.
No, that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But so they grow more legs as they get older, as well as more segments. And with both of these species, desert ringworms and giant African millipedes, they have, let's see, giant Africans are about just under 70 segments. So no, they don't have 1,000,000 or 1,000 legs. They have about,
140.
those two species, yes, are close to like 200,
Okay.
just over maybe, but
And how long does it take for them to get full grown? Or to like look
for
full grown?
desert rainworms, they're a smaller species, and I don't know what their lifespan is, to be honest. We've never really tracked that because we've always had this like booming group.
Okay.
Which I realize I never answered your question. I'm sorry, but giant African millipedes take about 4 or 5 years to become an adult.
Okay.
So they will be, I don't know, within a year they might be 2 inches long. 2 years they might be 4, and they'll be this like really gray, charcoalish kind of color. And then they'll get their really hardened exoskeleton and that black like sclerotization happening around 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
So
That's crazy for an insect. I would always just imagine that they mature a lot quicker than that.
yeah, no, not these guys. And there's no parental care either, so it's not like they have, a parent watching over them while they're, going about their young years. But
You mentioned they have like a really healthy diet here, and they get all sorts of fresh produce. Well, and cat food. What would they be eating in the wild that would like? Obviously, no one's feeding them like cut up cucumber and cat food in Africa. So, do you know what they're hunting or not? They're not hunting. What are they finding for protein in the wild?
So they will pick at things if they will scavenge if they happen across something. If they come across a dead insect or a dead bird or mouse or something like that, they will pick at it.
Okay.
They're opportunistic as well. But primarily it is broken down wood and leaf litter is what they will. They're detrivores, so they'll kind of turn that poor soil into really rich nutrients for our trees and other animals.
Yeah,
so.
those are some of the most valuable creatures out there.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing, really, and you can tell. Like I said, that I clean out that habitat about once a year. You can tell it gets really kind of moist and it's the best soil you could ever have. But it's not that leafy compost anymore. It's totally solid soil, if that makes any sense. It's very fertile.
Wow. I have 2 questions. One is when you're cleaning them out, what do you do? Like literally, how do you keep them alive? Where do you just like pick one by one and put them into an empty one, or do you already have like another tank with new compost or items that need composted?
Yeah, so it depends on the how many habitats that we have available. It just depends on our resources, but it's really nice if you have an extra like big tank to set up and you can go ahead and fill it with leaf mold or compost. Is the same thing. Which, by the way, is gathered by our horticulture department. Thank you, horticulture. Couldn't do it without you.
Team effort.
Yes.
Always shout out horticulture.
Yeah.
Yes,
Great work they
they're
do here.
amazing. But sometimes if I can, I'll fill that up with compost and then just move them over one by one. It's a very slow process. More often than not, I will only take half out at a time, and I'll just put half of the new, so yes, it is a one by one picking them out, moving them to like a critter keeper or something with a moist paper towel, something that they can hide under, and that's going to keep them not desiccating or drying out. They need to be in a moist environment.
Okay.
So if it's going to be a quick process and I'm just changing out like half of the tank, I will go ahead and I'll pick through half and or I'll just move them over to the other side. Like, go over there, go over there.
Oh, okay.
And I'll collect any eggs that I see and I'll rebury them on the other side. Any hatchlings I'll move over, or I'll take a count as I go and put fresh compost back in that side, filling it back up. Okay. And that way I'm not depleting the eggs or anything else. That's what I like to do ideally. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't happen like that, and I'll have to strip the entire tank out at once.
And see, that's what I don't really know. How do you decide when to do this? If they're meant to compost, like, do you really need to change it at all?
So I keep pretty thorough records, and because it's in a habitat that caps out and there is a height basis, they can't, that really fertile soil that they are constantly pooping out, you have to go somewhere with it.
Yeah.
So you have to move it out and replace it with really fresh stuff because that's their food.
Okay.
And so, so we bring compost in from outside, and I'm a very organized person, so I have like records of when I did it last. And I'll either base it on that kind of time frame, like, okay, it's been about 6 months, or it's been about a year, depending on the species. And then I'll clean it all out then.
Okay.
But you can also tell. You can tell in that, because it's in a 40-gallon tank, you can see the quality of that compost, or the organic, well, no, the inorganic decomposing stuff, like the leaf litter, it just gets broken down. You can see it.
Okay.
Okay.
So
the layers and everything.
it just looks wet and mushy once they've already processed it. It's not as flaky, I guess. If
That makes sense.
any sense.
It does,
It's hard to
Yeah.
describe unless you visually see
Right.
it.
And then my other question was more like specifically when you found these hatchlings, like what did you do other than celebrate, of course, but did you have to do a bunch of paperwork? Did you write out like how you did things and share it with like the other people in the swarm group, or
So we
what do
were
you
not
do?
a part of Swarm until we started breeding them.
Okay, that makes
and
sense.
had a good sized population base first. So prior to that, yes, I was taking very thorough notes about every little thing I was trying. Because I was trying to separate out a male and a female, and it did not work. And they need a certain depth of substrate and things like that. Like if you have 3 inches versus 6 inches, they're going to lay eggs in the 6 inches. They like to bury and protect their eggs, which
That
makes
makes
total
sense,
sense.
right?
But we just tried to make it as naturalistic as possible, and it just, taking notes like crazy. So when I saw the hatchlings, I yelled, told everybody on the team, yes! And of course you get the little, nagging suspicion, what if they're not? What if it's a native species and it's not what you think it is? And of course they're such slow growers that you're like, oh my gosh, 2
Right, you
months
have to-
later, have they grown? I don't know, I can't tell. But over time, it happened to be them, and I just recorded it in Zims and was approached by the swarm coordinator for
Okay.
that species, and they asked me if I wanted to join. I was like, yes, let's do it. So
Very cool.
Yeah.
When, how often do you have hatchlings now? Do you know more about their life cycles these days, or is it hard because of the giant colony?
it's interesting. It's hard because of the giant colony, but everything I've read about them says they only really breed once a year.
Okay.
I don't see that because for whatever reason, our millipedes breed better on exhibit, in our public area viewing display, as opposed to the keeper area habitat.
Okay.
I don't know why.
That's interesting.
I have no idea why. Yeah, it's weird. I get hatchlings in both, but it seems like we get more out on the public side of things, which you would think it's opposite because of
Yeah, that's interesting.
stress of animals and, pounding on the glass and things like that happens
Yeah.
all the time. But
It's
we seem to have them more often than once a year, so it's really interesting.
and
But it's
could it-
hard to account for.
Right, could it be just these, there was a group that had eggs in February, but a different group was aging
could be.
into, and had
Yes.
eggs in August or something?
Yes, and I don't know either, in Africa, I don't know if there's a certain trigger that triggers them all to breed at once. In the wild,
If it's,
that maybe they're
seasonal
not
almost.
getting that here because it's pretty consistent year-round for us. They have a high moisture content all the time. They, it's not like they have a rainy season versus
Right.
dry or
Yeah.
anything like that. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
I wonder if the lighting is different out front where the people are, or
No
versus
idea.
where you guys are back working, that sort of thing.
That's the fun thing is you can always tweak a little bit of.
That's
just
so
a
different
little
from
detail.
what we do in the sense that we
Yeah.
can change lots of things, but not
Yeah.
to the it's just so tiny, the details that you
Yeah.
guys can change,
We
We
can't
can
change
moisture
the
level
light
or-
temperature, the
Right.
temperature, the
Yes.
light exposure, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It can be, you have to be careful with that too, though, because the very slight change could be very detrimental
Yeah.
to a culture of insects too.
That
or
makes sense,
arthropods or
yeah.
millipedes. So
They're so so small compared and
Yes.
delicate, I feel like.
yes,
It makes sense that you say you're very detail oriented. I feel like that's a common theme among the insect keepers because you are managing these animals on a colony
itty-bitty.
basis.
Yes, you kind of have to be,
Yeah.
honestly, and you have to know your parameters. Should this grasshopper habitat be dry? Should it be wet? What does that look like? You really have to play around with it or look back in other keepers' notes and figure out what their natural history is altogether. It's a lot, and when you manage hundreds of species, it's a lot.
Is it easy to tell a male and female apart?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. This is such a fun question. It's not. It's really difficult. except for females are bigger. So there is a point in their life where I can visually tell. I don't know, like somebody who's not familiar with the species, I don't know if you would be able to be like, yeah, that's a female. Mm-hmm. I've worked with them for years, so I know what they look like. I can point it out. But females roughly are more robust. They're also longer in length.
Okay.
Granted, you have to keep in mind their age.
Right.
So it's tricky to tell, and you can kind of tell based on what their exoskeleton looks like as to whether they're adults or not, or very close to becoming adults. That exoskeleton is much more hardened. It's more plate-like, almost. But the males are about, 6-7 inches, whereas the females can get up to like 9-10.
Okay.
I think the record is something insane, like 15 inches. Wow. I think is record breaking.
Wow.
But I have never seen one that big in my life. I would love to, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Maybe you've seen a few more years.
Give it time.
I know, but it's really interesting if you look. So if a millipede is walking across the table and you look through their legs, like if you get eye level with them and you look underneath their legs, on the 7th pair of legs, so that 7th segment, the males will have little false legs or club-like appendages. Those are the male reproductive organs. They're called gonopods.
Okay.
So unless you knew that and you knew what you were looking at, no, it's not easy to tell.
It's always the 7th pair?
It's the 7th segment.
Okay.
Yeah, 7th pair of legs. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's across millipedes, I believe.
Okay.
That those reproductive organs are for males on the 7th. For females, I believe their reproductive organs are on the 2nd segment or 3rd segment.
Oh.
It's a little off. But when they breed, it's really interesting because it just looks like the male is hugging the female. And, like, he'll wrap around her, like, towards the end, but, like, they're face to face, and it just looks like they're hugging. And they're basically passing. The male has a spermatophore, which is like a little packet of sperm, and he'll actually pass it over to the female. And it gets absorbed into that female's reproductive organs. So
nature is wild.
So it's internal
crazy.
fertilization.
It's just yes. Huh?
So it's internal fertilization?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's crazy. I want to see a little millipede hug. I'm trying to see
I'll call you next time I see it. I'll be like, come over quick.
That sounds adorable.
It's really, I think it's cute.
What you really want to see is this reproduction happening.
Yes, you can. It's really cool because you can see the spermatophore. It looks like a little like pearl that they're passing over.
Way.
It's really neat. Yeah, it's
my
a little
God.
gelatinous.
It's like a little baby. Yeah, it's like a little baby.
It is. It's really cute.
Do you know how many eggs they typically like produce from that?
Ooh, I don't.
It's just
I have
underground.
no idea. I know that they'll lay them in clusters. How many? I have no idea.
Okay.
I know different species do different things. Like some millipede species will encapsulate each egg in like a little dirt kind of coating.
Wow.
And it's for protection, added protection, and it keeps them from drying out. But giant African millipedes and desert ringworms don't. They'll just lay them in clusters about 3 to 6 inches underground.
Okay.
I know you mentioned when they're growing, they're shedding those exoskeletons and molting pretty frequently.
Yep.
Once they reach adulthood, how often are they molting? Is it like a once a year thing? Is it
I think so.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's about once a year.
Okay. And I'm sure it depends on like the external conditions, or how much are they eating, like
Now
what the
I'm
moisture level's
questioning
like.
that though, because with walking sticks, and I know insects versus millipedes are different, but with walking sticks, once they hit adulthood, they don't molt anymore.
Oh.
So I
interesting.
wonder if maybe they do stop it once they're adults, but
Yeah, because if you aren't
Not
finding
sure.
them, I guess, but they could be underground and you just aren't finding them.
yeah. And if I'm going through the soil for any reason, I do find them molting. And
Okay.
it's cool. You can actually see their molt around their body because they curl up. They curl up for a defense mechanism as well. So their head is in the inside of this spiral, and they'll protect their head at all costs. But when they molt, they also kind of curl up, and that exoskeleton just kind of like falls off
Oh.
around the outside, and then they'll proceed to eat it because it's a protein source,
Okay.
readily available.
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
And sometimes they don't, and it's fine. It's just discarded.
But that would make sense why you don't find them as often either.
Yes.
You're eating them.
Yeah. So it's hard to keep track of because everything, for the most part, is unseen under
Below
ground.
eye level.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't want to disturb them to look, but
Right.
I don't know. I'll have to look that up now
That's
because I'm
interesting.
questioning my original answer.
Okay.
I don't know.
You said they're your favorites, the giant African millipedes. Like, what is it about them? What is the difference? They're just cute. Okay. It's like, do they have little personalities? Is there anything?
Jenna, did you not just hear they give each other hugs? Like, yeah, they'd be my favorite too.
I don't know. There's just something about, like, they're impressive, I think, and I think people gravitate towards impressive with regards to arthropods in general. Like, you almost need that draw from people to not think that they're gross or scary or anything like that. And they're just so gentle. Like, they're not going to hurt you. They might secrete a little something, but it's not going to hurt you as long as you don't lick the millipede. It's fine. Like, which, by the way, fun fact, this might be on your trivia question later, I don't know. Giant African millipedes will secrete a cyanide-based kind of toxin.
Okay.
And in the wild, it like wards predators, obviously, away from them. Like, don't eat me, I'm gross, I don't taste good, I'll make you sick. So maybe the first millipede gets eaten by a bird, that bird will not eat a second one at all. So it is a good defense mechanism. But other really cool things are birds and monkeys will actually they'll bite a millipede and they'll rub it all over their fur. And it acts as a mosquito repellent.
Wow.
Which is kind
No
of
way.
cool.
That's very cool.
Yes.
One, that they're smart enough to do that and figure that out, and the fact that it keeps mosquitoes away.
Well, then they proceed, and this has been studied. It's not just me saying this for funsies, but then they will pass that millipede around, and there is a hallucinogenic in it, and they will get a high off of
No way.
the toxin in the millipede. Yeah, it's insane. Like, I assume they're vervet monkeys that do this, but I'm not entirely sure exactly which species.
Wow.
That's
was studied,
incredible.
But yeah.
It's
But-
supposed to make them go away, and instead
Yeah, right? I know, they're like, let me
get
rub
some
you
of that.
all over me and
more
eat you.
millipedes.
I know. But yeah, I guess it's been studied in, like, Amazon species, too,
Okay.
for other millipede species. Like, birds will pick them up, and it's a deterrent for other insects, and it's like, wow, that's
Wow.
insane.
Yes.
Or like army ants and things like that will not go near a millipede
Wow.
that secretes
That's
those
very
chemicals.
interesting.
Yeah.
We
It's
need
really
some of that this
interesting.
time of year here. I mean,
I
not that I
know.
want to kill a millipede for it. It's
No.
not worth it to me, but, like, we need
I'm
something
glad.
to keep the bugs away here, man.
I know. Just the mosquitoes. It's
Just the
fine.
mosquitoes.
The yellow jackets have been a lot lately. I don't know how you guys
agree.
feel about yellow jackets. I also, like, defend so many insects, and I have a hard time. I'm like, do they pollinate? Do yellow jackets pollinate?
I'm sure they can. They're not known for it, though. So
Okay.
they are a type of wasp. And we always call them meat bees because they need a high protein source. So they'll go after meat and things like that the first half of the year, I think. And then the second half of the year, which is now, they're going after sugary items.
Yeah, you always see them at the restaurant with people. They're
Yes.
just. I feel so bad for our guests here.
I
They're
know.
just being swarmed by
Swarming
these
their
yellow
drinks
jackets.
and-
Yeah. And it's so hard to, like,
It's
educate
okay.
about, like, honeybees and carpenter bees and all these other insects that are not going to harm them.
Yes.
And then the yellow jacket's like, oh, they actually might.
Yeah.
sting you.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry.
And there's not, I mean, really, unless you were to keep everything ridiculously clean and no, like, sugar droppings, or, like, if somebody spills their drink, you get every little droplet up, like, they're gonna find it.
Yes. They've been finding our kudu lately, and we're very
Oh,
upset.
no. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
But, yeah, millipedes are awesome. They're my favorite.
They're your favorite? Oh, we always like
They're
to
just
ask, and lots of
fun,
people
yeah.
won't
I know.
answer, so I'm glad you did.
I don't know. Out of the millipedes, they're my favorite.
Okay. And it's definitely helpful that you've figured something out, and, like, it's your project and something that
Yeah.
you've accomplished. I think they have to have a special place in your heart, like,
Yes.
after that.
For sure.
There is still a little label on their habitat that says "My Grand Millipedes," and it's like now like 6 to 16 generations.
like
and I have no
great,
idea
great.
what generation I'm on anymore, but I'm like, that will always stay.
Yes. That's very
That's
cool.
awesome. That's definitely
Yeah.
something to be proud of. That's awesome.
They're fun.
Yeah.
They're cute.
Oh, I have one more question about just your day. So I've probably asked this in other episodes with your coworkers, but I'm sure you're busy, so I'm not trying to say that. But I don't understand. Okay, so you don't clean that tank every day. You put the food in. Okay, let's say that takes 20 minutes to cut it and put it in there. So again, I'm not saying you're not busy, because I know you guys are.
We're swamped.
So then what do you do next? Because you don't... So just tell us kind of what it's like on a daily basis for you. Yes, like you come in and you do what?
Yeah, so very first thing is we will go around in our keeper area and we'll mist certain habitats. We have a blue dot on habitats that need more humidity, and we want to make sure that animals aren't desiccating, and because our animals molt all the time, they need water. They need to be moisture filled. But we start the day by doing that, and we'll prep the diet and have that on a little cart, and we'll bring it out into the public area. Because our building is built the way it is, most of our public area habitats are only removable from the public side. So we have to clean all the glass, feed all the animals every single day, and they're insects, so they don't have long lives. If one passes away, we have to then replace it with another. So we have to do all of that before 8:30 when our building then gets cleaned by Park Services.
Oh, okay.
So by that time, and then we have our big exhibits like our butterfly aviary, we have our leafcutter ants, naked mole rats, and aquatics that also need to be done because they are big displays before 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So that takes you up to 9, 10 o'clock if you're lucky, if you're really doing well. And then it kind of branches off into each keeper's kind of facet of animals. So like you have mentioned, we're all primary keeper of a subset of animals. And for me, I have what we call veggie changes 3 times a week. So my Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll go through all of my animals and I'll feed them, fresh veggies. Most of mine are detrivores or frugivores, and they won't eat. They're not predators, so I don't have to replenish that on a daily basis. But let's see. Soil needs changed out on not a daily basis, but you think about there's like 60 some odd exhibits out in our public side, and then on the back side we have more than that. So you have at least 1, if not 5 more, where we raise the animals in the back.
Okay.
And so each of those is on a different time scale.
That makes sense.
Then you have to collect compost. And then you have to, like for beetle larvae, for instance, they are all kept in these habitats that are basically Rubbermaid containers. They do great in there, but they need supplemented 3 times a week. So it's like you have to feed them, and then once a month they all get pulled. I have 58 bins.
Wow.
Right now. So it's like they get pulled once a month, the pupa collected, put in another area. The larvae counted, made sure they don't have mite issues or anything else, refilled with compost, go to the next one, and you do that. It's on a big rotational
Okay,
thing.
so it's like even though you may not be doing, let's just say, Madagascar has seen cockroaches today, you're doing a different one,
Yes.
and then it like rotates enough that you're
Yes.
always doing several every
Yes.
single day.
And there's
Okay.
no catching up, but we're
Yes.
okay. We've come to those terms, but you guys probably understand that as well. There's no catching up.
Yeah. That was definitely something that amazed me when I went behind the scenes in the world of insect, was just how much behind the scenes animals there were. Like, because like you said, the insects don't have super long lifespans, and the way their life stages work, you have to have insects in each stage of their life in order to have animals for the public to see. So it's like the amount of bins and stuff behind the scenes filled with larvae and filled with adults.
Some of those bins have 5 larvae, some have about 100, and it's a lot of mouths to feed and a lot of supplies to keep up with. A lot of I'm very good at counting. I can do that.
It's good you guys are all good at organization, because I would not be able to keep all that straight. I'm glad you guys
almost
can.
have to be. You have to. I've got a spreadsheet that I keep a lot of stuff just to keep track, but it's difficult and it's action packed. And then we get our produce days in, and unfortunately for us, things have insecticide on it, so we have to go through and hand wash every single bit of produce.
That's kind of
comes in.
scary and sad.
It's very scary.
Yeah.
And grasshoppers are generally the most delicate when it comes
Really?
to that. They cannot, like, some animals are hardier than others, and if they ingest a little bit of insecticide, it's not going to bother them too much. But grasshoppers and other orthopterans, they will crash.
Oh,
Like,
no.
the whole culture will collapse. So you gotta wash very thoroughly. It's an important job. It's a mundane job, but
Do you use anything to clean, or is it just pure water?
Just
can
water.
Fix it. Okay.
so we do scrub it, and
Okay.
like the lettuce, like romaine, for
That's
instance,
hard
we
to
cut
clean.
the stem. We cut the stem, and every leaf gets pulled. Kale is the same way,
Oh gosh,
and we have a wash bucket, a rinse bucket, and then
that makes total sense. But I
Wow.
didn't realize you guys were doing
hours.
that. Oh my
It's
gosh,
hours a week. So yeah, it's a lot.
That is a lot, man.
that's
tedious.
just really sad to me. I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and we've
Like,
tried going the organic route, but you can never be certain.
Right.
And you have like systemic pesticides nowadays too, so
It's just in the soil, yeah.
yeah, and a lot of like walking sticks eat plants, and we use plants on grounds and stuff to cut and feed our animals, and you have to be really conscientious of where you can go to find those plants that are safe. So it's tricky.
Yeah,
That is,
that
yeah.
It's tricky, but that's another aspect is going on grounds and cutting
Mm-hmm.
leaves, especially in the winter. It's very tricky.
Yeah, I bet.
Walking sticks are picky, and so are ants, and they will only cut and eat certain things. And it's like, guys, you only have like viburnum left, so this is what you're getting.
It's also fascinating though that they are picky and they know exactly what they want.
Yeah.
It's insane. Leafcutter ants, especially, like
They're fascinating. We still need to talk to one of you about
Kelly.
the leaf cutter.
Oh,
ants.
Kelly
Yes.
is your go-to
Yes.
there. Oh my gosh, you
They're
can talk your head off
fascinating.
for days. It's amazing, but yeah.
Well, it sounds like you guys are super busy and doing really cool work and things that I obviously have never even thought of that you
Yeah.
have to do, and I've been here for a long time.
Come in
So
the back. You can watch us one
okay,
day.
yes,
It's
we'll have to
fun.
come over. We say that almost every episode now.
I
We're
know.
like, There's
It's
so much
hard.
going on
There's
that
so
we
much
don't
to
know
see, I
about.
know.
Yes, we want to
It's
see.
tricky.
But thank you so much for talking to us. Is there anything else we missed that you want to share, or?
I think just, give insects the benefit of the doubt. Think of that poor little spider running away from you, being terrified.
Definitely.
Things like that. I don't know.
The more you learn, the more
give
you
a
might
little
love
grace.
them.
Yeah,
Yes.
look
It's
up
like 99.9% of them are harmless, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And
yeah.
doing a lot of good for
Yeah.
for us.
Yes,
Yes.
they're so important.
Every insect has some, or every arthropod, I should say, has some value to give, even a mosquito.
That's what I want to know, the value of a mosquito, Michelle. What is it?
The larvae are a huge food source to a lot of animals.
Okay.
That's one of the bigger ones.
Okay,
As
take it.
adults, they're also a food source, but they are, vectors of disease, so
It's hard to
what
defend
you
them.
can
You know,
get.
I can defend a spider really easily, but defending the
it's hard.
mosquitoes
It's
is
hard. I agree. I don't like them much either. But they are
Well,
good.
Michelle, if you're up for it, I do have some trivia for you today. If you're up for the task.
I
I
feel
don't
like it's
know.
been a while.
It has been a while since we've done trivia.
Don't judge my
it's right in my
insect
wheelhouse.
knowledge on this trivia.
So it's actually millipede trivia.
Oh boy.
So we're
I'm
talking
done.
millipedes today. I've got 4 questions for you all.
Okay.
So question 1, we had mentioned multiple times throughout this episode about how much diversity there is within not only the insect world, the arthropod world, the millipede world especially.
Mm-hmm.
How many different species of millipedes are there?
I'm wondering what number you have, because I have a number in my head. I'll let you say first, because
Okay.
I don't want to deter your answer.
Oh, I'm so embarrassed.
Yeah, no,
I don't-
this-
And
these
I
are-
don't know if I'm right either.
These
so.
are Jenna's favorite questions. These are-
It's hard.
It's probably like astronomical. Well, I'm guessing it's not as close as there are beetles.
Correct.
Not as many millipedes. But I also don't. I'm going to say 4,700.
4,700, okay.
Okay, so I believe, we'll see if I'm right here. I think there's about 10,000 named species, but up to 80,000 that we don't have discovered or known, like named and known. yet.
So she's right on. Yeah, there's about between 10 to 11,000 named species, depending on kind of sources you look at.
Yes.
And scientists estimate that there's somewhere around 75,000 species that are
okay.
yet to be named to be discovered out there,
Yeah.
which is
What
wild
makes
to
them
think about.
There, I don't know, but fun story. I just went to a conference, an invertebrate conference, and the keynote speaker, Dr. Merrick, is a millipede expert, and he just discovered a millipede in Australia that has the most. It is now the animal with the most legs in the world, and it had 1,306 legs.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, my question for that is always, how do they know if it has or hasn't been discovered before?
That's what
You know,
researchers
I
are
just-
for. I have no idea.
How does he know no one's seen it? And if somebody sees it, how do they know to report it? I wouldn't know where to report something. If I saw a cool bug I've never seen before, I'd
Just
be
report
like, do
it,
I do
because
anything?
I
Really?
take a picture of it
There's
and
so
be like,
many
that was cool.
insects.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
wild to me. And
It's
then you have to
insane.
determine somehow that
Yeah.
it is a new one and no one has discovered it before. But wow,
That
over
blows my
1,000
mind.
legs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1,300.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's crazy.
And
There
that's
are
a lot
twice
to
as
be
many.
discovered. I might be able to
Yeah.
discover a new millipede. There's a
You
chance.
very
You
well
could.
You very well could.
7,000 options,
Yeah.
possibly.
I was gonna say,
I
it's
bet if
insane.
you go to the tropics, that's your best bet.
Very true.
But
Let's just do that.
Eastern
Let's go on a trip.
Kentucky has a lot of the flat millipedes that I was talking about. They're like a hot spot in the world for those.
Interesting.
So go to Eastern Kentucky.
Okay.
There you go.
That's close enough.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think. So there's twice as many species of millipedes as there are species of mammals.
Wow.
So think of how much diversity there is in the mammal kingdom.
Yeah.
And then twice as many millipedes out there.
You can always learn.
Wild. 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 So, second question, we're 1 for 1 here.
All right.
Second question, what is the largest species of millipede and how large is it?
In the world?
Yes. I'll take 2 answers.
Largest as in heaviest or longest?
Longest.
I've no
Well, I'd have to say that new millipede that was
Right?
just discovered in Australia, but I don't know what its name is. I don't know.
It's not the one from Australia because that's coming up on the next question.
Oh, okay.
Can I just guess its length? And I have no idea what
Yeah.
it's called. Okay, I'm going to guess 22 inches.
22 inches.
I don't even know.
And it's
I'll
called
say 17.
Gigantus
17.
millipede.
Giant Africans are gigas, so you're
Oh,
close. Yeah.
So, depending on which source you look at, giant Africans, their average body length is the
Okay.
longest.
It's the
At
longest.
about 10, you may differ a little bit. You obviously have much more experience with than I do. But about 10 inches, it says,
Okay.
is average.
That's about right.
But the largest is 16 inches, millipede from the Amazon. So,
That would be amazing to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Oh, I would die.
16 inches would be wild. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, coming up next, you mentioned this millipede that was discovered in Australia. It does not have a common name yet.
Oh.
Scientific name, I'm going to botch this, is Eumapilles persephone. It was discovered in 2021. How many legs does it have? Michelle just mentioned it. Do you remember, Jenna?
1,300 and something ends with a 6.
Yes.
1,306.
1,306.
I was like, I don't remember what the third number was.
1,306.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's got the most legs of any animal. True millipede, 1,306 legs is insane. They discovered it 50 feet below the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so that's part of why they think that there are so
Okay.
many,
Yeah.
because there's cave dwellers, there's
Burrowers,
subterranean.
What was he
terrestrial-
doing that he found that? Or is he specifically looking for millipedes? And
I think he was, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
it-
sure his.
Because it lived so deep underground, it lacked pigmentation. It didn't have any eyes or anything like that. Because obviously it's pitch black 50 feet under the ground. So yeah, insane.
How does it find other ones?
You know, I often wonder
I don't have an
that.
answer.
I'm sure there's pheromones and stuff, but
And then they just have to dig and dig blindly and hope they can hug.
where
Wow.
where is my friend?
Wow, and like to dig and not harm it and like find it in general. I have
Yeah.
so
Or
many
if it
questions.
was like a chance,
right?
like I wonder if there's like construction or something.
Yeah, it
Hey,
could have
we found
been
this.
something
I have
like
no
that, yeah.
idea.
But if he's a millipede expert and he
He is,
found it, then it makes
yeah.
me think he was looking for something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
He
didn't
had
know what he was
reason to
looking
believe
for.
something was there.
But then, yeah, I wonder like what tools they use. 50 feet is really deep.
It's
That's
deep.
like very
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's way underground.
Good
It is
job, though.
interesting
You got
though.
the
It's-
legs.
I know.
Just listen.
Fun fact.
1,300 legs, and it's only 5 inches long.
Oh wow.
Which is crazy.
Really?
To think about.
5 inches?
I was thinking it was
5
giant.
inches
Yeah.
long.
Okay.
I was thinking it was
Yeah.
longer than that too.
Yeah, crazy. All right, we're in good shape here. Last question. There was recently a millipede species discovered in Tennessee, named after a certain pop star.
Oh no.
What pop star was this millipede named after?
Oh, I'm terrible with music. I,
Dolly Parton.
It's not Dolly Parton. That's not a bad guess for Tennessee, though.
oh gosh, I would have no idea. I don't know my musicians.
I don't either.
I have no idea. I can't even guess.
Can I give you a hint?
Yes.
Jenna, you absolutely love this person.
Is it after Taylor Swift?
It is
It's
the Taylor.
T-Swift.
No.
No way! Oh my gosh,
It's
she has
T-Swift.
a millipede named
I didn't know that.
She's got a
I
millipede
wonder
named
if she
after her.
knows.
It's the scientific name. I'm probably going to botch the pronunciation. Is Nanaria swiftae, and it is the swift twisted claw millipede.
Oh my gosh,
Discovered in
That's
Tennessee.
amazing.
Apparently, the doctor who discovered it had said that Taylor Swift music helped him get through graduate school and undergraduate school, and he said it was his way to repay Taylor Swift.
That's
the name of
amazing.
millipede after.
that's incredible.
So her touch, it's everywhere. It's-
Even in the
I had
millipede
no
world.
idea. No kidding.
I love that.
She's everywhere.
That just made my day.
Now I want to like Google a picture of it.
I know, a twisted claw. Did you read anything about it? Does it have...
So I to be honest, I didn't really understand where the twisted claw moniker came
Some
from. based on my
have like little on the bottom of their feet. Some have little claws, so I wonder if it's
Okay, it could.
something funky
It
with their
could.
claws. I don't know.
Yeah, found in the
Twisted
Appalachian
claws.
Mountains. Yeah.
Really? Huh?
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being a good sport and playing along with
you're
trivia.
welcome.
But do you have anything else for Michelle while we have her, Jenna?
What can I do?
Oh, the what can I do? I love these. I would say, I don't know, if you're outdoorsy and you're looking for critters, which I highly suggest you do, go and, inspect your own habitats. But if you're out flipping logs or rocks or anything like that, that is a home and a food source to a lot of other tiny organisms. So make sure you flip that log or that rock back over the way you found it if you're looking. Do it, because it's amazing to see all the life that's underneath a rotten log. For instance, you'll find centipedes, millipedes, beetles, larvae, ants, all kinds of stuff. But make sure you put it back how it was.
I always worry about that. It's funny, like I grew up catching grasshoppers and
Yeah.
building homes for them. And looking back, I'm like, I just killed a bunch of insects, but I really liked them. I hope I didn't kill as many as I think now, but I hope I released
Most are
some. But
pretty hardy, and most can burrow too. So if you flip it back, you're most likely not squishing.
okay, that's what.
anything
Yeah, I
like
always
that.
worry about that. I'm like, you want to be curious, and that's what
Yes.
made me fall in
Yeah.
love with animals and
Yes.
insects and things growing up. But then I'm like, what harm did I do? But it's good to
Yeah.
know that
Just
you
put
likely
it-
won't.
Yeah, put it back. A lot of insects are resilient because they
Okay.
have to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And odds are, I know this might sound a little rough, but if you do squish it, insects are pretty populous in numbers, so it's okay. You're not going to deplete their population, and if you squish one, it's probably food for another animal. So
That's a good way of looking at it. It makes me feel a little better.
just try to flip it back in the same orientation, though, because I know a lot of, that's shelter for a lot of animals, and if you flip it and leave it exposed, you're basically putting a bullseye on all the critters living there, and predators will come and have a nice little snack.
Yeah. This is
So-
a great what can I do for just how easy and simple it is.
Yeah.
But also how important it is. I had just it's funny this is just your what can I do because I had just read a story about how throughout Smoky Mountain National Park it was becoming a really big issue. It is still currently a big issue that you'll see pictures on Facebook and Instagram and stuff of people who build these
Stacking the rocks.
these rock towers in
Not
streams.
good.
It is not good at all.
Yeah.
They're really depleting all these little micro ecosystems where all of these little invertebrates live, and that's the basis of the food source. So these are actually doing a lot of damage throughout the ecosystem, and it's not that hard. Just don't build these little rock structures.
No,
Just
don't.
put a rock back if you do flip it over.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially, like, I see a lot of those structures built along water systems and in creeks and streams and stuff. It's like, my previous career was with aquatic invertebrates.
Okay.
So it's like you are taking a lot of them need those rocks in the creeks and the streams in order to slow that flow of water down.
Right, I was going to say, and it probably like hurts or helps cause erosion, right?
Yes.
Like it's causing so many
that
issues.
water
Yes, you're not
blows
thinking
out,
about
the more erosion happens, and
Yeah.
also a lot of those animals will attach themselves to rocks in the water to like caddisfly larvae and things like that. So just
put it back.
put it back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
take a
love it.
look, but put it back.
Yep.
Take a look and
I
put
like
it back.
that.
That's good.
Cute. That's perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for telling us about millipedes and answering all of our questions about what it's like to be an insect keeper, because we still have more. So much to understand, but
You're welcome.
and so many arthropods.
So many.
I know.
So many.
So many. You'll have to get Kelly in here for ants. She
Yes.
will blow your mind.
Yes.
It's insane. That's a whole other dynamic that's beyond me.
And Michelle, one thing I really need from you is next time you get a glimpse of one of these millipede hugs, I need
will
you to
let
snap a
you
picture
know.
of it. Let me
I'm
know.
sure I have one. I'll have to sort through
I'm
my
trying to
phone
see
for
this.
you. That's awesome. Thank you guys.
gosh.
Oh, thanks
Yeah.
for being here. Everyone have a great day, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you all. Until next time.